an agreement or an attempt to get a story straight. And the reason I say that is, in the early parts of the first interview with the defendant and the first interview with Mr. Cook, the wording is identical. They give the exact same statement. They are separated. They have been separated since they left the house. These interviews are a very good time period later that evening, and they both give the same statement. As he is pressed and discussed and questioned by the detectives, he says, by the time I got out of the car, I knew they were encroaching the car. The defendant, who he names, said, stop, they fired and he fired. That is not what the video shows. Again, the defendant made no comment, no warning, no statement ever to the police. He lay in ambush, stepped back in the house, and then shot from the position of cover at these deputies. He says he was getting out. Mr. Cook says he was getting out of the car as the shooting began and witnessed the shooting. That also is not true from within the video. He never takes his foot off the brake until well after the shooting is over. He says he told the defendant during the phone call that I don't want to do this, referring to going to jail. And the defendant said, don't stop, keep coming. He also says that the defendant still had his rifle in his hand when he entered the garage to tell him to come into the home. And that's the phone call that was made between the time the deputies turned around and got behind Mr. Cook until the time he arrived at the house where the defendant was, where the defendant shot the deputies. Stacey Cook was interviewed. She is the homeowner. She's lived in that neighborhood approximately 32 years. She is Christopher Cook's mother. She told us that the defendant and Mr. Cook had moved in a while back. She didn't specify an exact time frame. That they were living there, sharing a room upstairs. Within their room and in the area where they slept, there are several weapons, both long guns and pistols, a large amount of ammunition, extra magazines, plate carriers, which are what we call the thrower vests, that have a rifle plate in the front, a rifle plate in the back, which you often see on special ops troops, or you see in police first responders, military or police style tactical helmet, and a large amount of what I would call tactical gear. There are also in the closet some type of military appearing clothing, BDU type clothing that appears to have insignia on it that would at least indicate someone not checking very carefully that there's a military presence. His social media, defendant's social media, as we were interviewing Ms. Cook, it's clear from social media there are an awful lot of videos of people dressed in full BDUs, firing firearms, becoming proficient with firearms to include fully automatic firearms, multiple tube night vision, military style, dressed in full helmets, full armor, full gear. And at least a couple of those videos you can see from the side what appears to be the defendant. The videos appear to be of him. The reason we bring that up is Ms. Cook told us that she took the defendant in because he's a disabled veteran. That's why she allowed him to live in the home. He has on his arm, one of his upper arms, a tattoo of the emblem that is very well known worldwide, the two stylized A's that are the 82nd Airborne insignia. However, the National Personnel Records Center has no record of the defendant ever serving in the military. He's never been enlisted. He's never been drafted. He has never served. He admitted during his interview with Detective Mills that he had never enlisted or served, claimed that he had taken the ASVAB test twice, once for the Army, once for the Marines, that he did not score high enough for his wanted MOS, which was airborne, and therefore he didn't enter the military. Our research into the military, and as late as last night talking to another gentleman who was a sergeant in the military actively, that's not an MOS, Your Honor. You enter as an infantryman or you enter as an officer and you seek to get the skill training that is airborne and be assigned there. Whether he took the test or not, I don't know, but certainly that wasn't the reason for not entering the military. She also said our days are focused around the defendant's illness. And when asked what that illness was, she said cancer. He has been screened repeatedly since he's been in custody. He's had multiple medical screenings, visits to medical facilities for one reason and another, and there is no evidence that he is at any point in time suffering from or have a diagnosis of cancer. She was called by the defendant and by her son before they turned themselves in. She also indicated she has been providing money to help a female that's been identified as Hannah with a variety of problems, social issues, whatever. It's someone that was put forward to her by the defendant. However, the police, as of this time, I'm not going to say she doesn't exist, but the police have been unable to locate or identify anyone named Hannah. It appears, while living in the house, while doing all of these things, there's also been fraud going on against Ms. Cook. The defendant agreed to 2 interviews, one the night of the incident into the early morning hours, and one a few days later. He claims he didn't hear the deputies on the first visit to the house that day, that he had AirPods in and was watching TV in the upstairs bedroom. In the first interview, he claimed that he was called by Christopher Cook and told, "They are behind me." Cook sounded erratic and afraid. He refused to admit that Cook told him it was the police, which of course the detectives knew by that point. They had already interviewed Cook. He later admitted that when he looked out of the home, he saw blue lights, and I quote, "When you see blue lights, you know it's the cops." He said he didn't recognize the deputies' uniforms. He has had involvement with law enforcement in this county before that would have led to him going to the Adult Detention Center, although those cases were later dismissed. He certainly has seen the Brown Sheriff's Deputy uniforms before. And to be clear, Deputy Koleski, Deputy Irvin were wearing brown, typical sheriff's uniforms, not the gray of the Special Ops Division that's in front of you today. He admits he was at home 2 weeks before when the deputies attempted to serve the warrant. When he was asked by the detectives, "What didn't that mean you knew there was a lawful warrant and a lawful arrest?" he stated, quote, "How do I know if it's lawful if I hadn't spoken to them?" During his second interview, he claims that the call from Cook is too distorted to hear, that he never understood what Cook was saying, and that he had no idea what he said, and that he never saw blue lights nor recognized uniforms during the shooting incident. This also goes against what he said as his explanation for why this incident took place during his first interview, which was when Cook said, "They are behind me," he didn't identify police. According to the defendant, Mr. Cook said he clearly said it was law enforcement. And that a few weeks before, a road rager, his term, had followed Mr. Cook into the neighborhood, and that he was afraid it was a similar type incident. That's why he hardened himself. That's why he went to the front door. That's why he lay in wait for the folks coming. Certainly those two stories can't match. You either did or didn't understand the phone call, and we know for sure there were blue lights, sirens, all of the indicia of law enforcement in the front of that house. He described the shooting as a skirmish. Other quotes that I think the court should consider in considering the charges here today: "Had my weapon shouldered in the ready position. I went back into a fallback position." That's talking about retreating into the home. Very clearly says he could see through the blinds and see what he was shooting at. Most importantly, I think before the shooting, his quote is, "I had the drop," talking about when he went out and set up on the front porch. Post-shooting, he and Mr. Cook, according to the defendant, discussed defending themselves because our ancestors had defended themselves for hundreds of years. Claims that he screamed warnings to the deputies to stop. He said both on one of the 911 calls and in one of his interviews, and I apologize for the language, Your Honor, but this is a direct quote, "I said 5 fucking times, man." However, the video clearly shows he never said a word. He claims they gave no warnings. The video again clearly shows that both deputies were screaming at the top of their lungs to show his hands and drop the weapon. And then he claimed that when he shot out the front window, he was using suppressing fire because he was worried about people invading his home, charging into his home, and coming to kill him and Christopher Cook, none of which is borne out by what was going on. Of particular note, when the video was reviewed, the deputies never put their hands on their weapons or pulled a weapon until the front door opened and the defendant appeared with a rifle. They were going up the driveway to get Mr. Cook on a nonviolent warrant, get him out of his car, and take him into custody. No one had a weapon out. I think most importantly, Your Honor, when he is asked about his firearms experience, he says, and I quote again, "I'm a very good marksman, good out to 1,000 yards." That was his quote to Detective Mills. Your Honor, the charges before us today are malice murder, count 1 of Deputy Marshal Samuel Irvin Jr. Count 2, the malice murder of Deputy Jonathan Randall Koleski. Count 3, the felony murder of Deputy Irvin. Count 4, the felony murder of Deputy Koleski. Count 5, aggravated assault on a peace officer, that being Deputy Irvin. And that count is separate and distinct from the aggravated assault giving rise to the felony murder. As you heard, Deputy Irvin was hit by the 8th shot. There had been 7 shots in his and Deputy Koleski's direction before. They are separated both by space, and the shots are separated by a few seconds each. That meets the standard. Count 6, aggravated assault on Deputy Koleski. That also is for the other gunshots before Deputy Koleski was struck by the third shot, and for the shots that occurred after. Deputy Koleski engaged in the fight, also evacuated himself, attempted to treat his injuries, and was present for all of the gunshots. He did not immediately succumb to his wounds. Possession of a firearm during the commission of the murder of Deputy Irvin. Possession of a firearm during the commission of the murder of Deputy Koleski. Those are counts 7 and 8. And count 9, hindering the apprehension of a fugitive. Your Honor, I believe the factual basis that we've put in front of the court, as well as the fact that the defendant, as part of a plea agreement which has been filed with the court this morning, has waived all defects, admitted to the fact there is a factual and legal basis for each of these counts to be handled and sentenced, shows that he committed these murders with the requisite malice to prove a malice murder, as well as committing multiple aggravated assaults, possessing the rifle during the commission of this crime, and was deliberately hindering the apprehension of Christopher Cook. Additionally, I would note for the record, having reviewed these videos, Mr. Camarillo and I, along with the detectives, have reviewed them multiple times. There is no indication in the more than 2 hours worth of interviews with this defendant and the 911 calls. He is articulate. He is very oriented to time and place. He appears to be very intelligent. He engages the detectives in a variety of topics that are not having anything to do with the subject we're here today about, just during the interview talking about one thing and another. Clearly has a very good memory of things that have happened in his life and current events and other things. There is no indication that he has any intellectual disabilities. There certainly is no indication that there is any justification defense available in this case. And for that reason, Judge, I believe we've laid our factual basis. We'd ask you to go through the Boykins and accept the plea.
Ms. Gilbert, do you stipulate to the factual basis for the plea?
Yes, I do stipulate to the factual basis for a plea here today, yes.
Judge, one thing I forgot, and it's a very common rookie mistake, I shouldn't have made it. This occurred within Cobb County at 2484 Hampton Glen Court. It is within the boundaries of Cobb County, Georgia.
Do you stipulate to that as well, Ms. Gilbert?
I do, Your Honor, yes.
Okay, can you give me a summary of negotiations, please?
Your Honor, as to count 1, malice murder, life without parole. As to count 2, the malice murder of Deputy Koleski, life without the possibility of parole, consecutive to count 1. Counts 3 and 4, the felony murders, are vacated as a matter of law. For the people in the courtroom who may not be lawyers, that means those convictions can't be sentenced along with the malice murder, but he is pleading guilty to those as well. That is a sentencing issue. Aggravated assault on a peace officer, count 5, 20 years to serve in confinement, consecutive to count 2. Aggravated assault on a peace officer, count 6, consecutive to count 5. Count 7, possession of a firearm during commission of a felony, 5 years to serve in confinement. That will run consecutive to count 9. Count 8, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, run consecutive to count 7, 5 years to serve in confinement. And count 9, hindering the apprehension or punishment of a criminal, is 5 years to serve in confinement, consecutive to count 6. It is structured that way, Your Honor, because as the court knows, the possession of a firearm during commission of a felony must run consecutive to all other counts. The sum total of this is 2 life sentences without possibility of parole to run one after the other, plus 55 years. This is the maximum sentence allowable, short of death. Additionally, he has agreed to the forfeiture of a list of weapons seized from the scene of the crime. Those include a Colt AR-15 style rifle in caliber .556, an IWI AR-15 style rifle caliber .556, a Sig Sauer AR-15 caliber .556, a Glock 17 9mm pistol, a Kimber 1911 45 caliber pistol. He has also, as part of both the Senate sheet and a separate waiver filed with the court, waives his right to any post-conviction relief, including, but not limited to, the withdrawal of his plea following today, direct appeal, indirect appeal, state habeas corpus, federal habeas corpus, clemency, executive pardon, parole, compassionate release under the Georgia Constitution, or any other relief resulting in the release of the defendant before the expiration of his natural life. And we would ask the court, as you go through his rights, to make sure he understands habeas, state and federal, and all the appeals. Those are all different proceedings, and he is waiving everything. He should have no opportunity to ever seek early release or to seek any review of this case.
All right, one more question before you sit down. As part of, I assume these negotiations have been discussed with the victims' families?
Your Honor, they have been discussed with both victims' families. Both victims' families are here at the appropriate time. There are some victim impact statements for the court. Both victims' families were consulted before this offer was made, and I want to be very clear, and I think I said this earlier. We were approached by opposing counsel, asked whether we would consider a life without parole offer. The state stood ready to seek death, stands ready to seek death if this plea doesn't complete. We met with the families, and the families told us, for a variety of reasons that are their own, that they believe this is the best resolution for each of the families independently, and we met with them together, and they reiterated that. Once the plea agreement was signed by opposing counsel and the defendant, we met with them a second time, talked them through all of the issues again, and they again expressed that they are in support of this resolution and this is what they want, which is why we're here today.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Gilbert, are these the negotiations that you've agreed to?
Yes, Judge, these are the terms of negotiation.
Is there anything you want to add to those negotiations?
Not at this time, Judge, no.
All right. Mr. Golden, did you hear the facts of the case as set forth by the Assistant District Attorney?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have any major disagreement with those facts?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you understand that the state sentence recommendation is that you serve 2 life sentences in prison without parole plus 55 years? Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you in agreement with that recommendation?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Before I can decide whether I will accept your guilty plea, I need to determine if you're making your plea knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily. That is, I need to know whether you know and understand that what you're doing here today, and I need to know that you're doing that of your own free will, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. If at any time you don't understand the questions or the words that I use during this hearing, or want any further explanation, you feel free to stop me so that I can explain that. I'm happy to do so.
Yes, Your Honor.
If you answer a question, I'm going to assume that you understood the question. Do you understand?
I do understand, Your Honor.
All right. Do you recognize this form I'm holding up we refer to as the Boykins Rights Form?
I can't see.
Your Honor, he cannot see it. If I may approach, I can show it.
Let me pass this down, please.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Did you go over every line of this form and discuss it with your attorney?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Golden, how old are you?
30.
Are you, I'm sorry, say that again?
30, Your Honor. Sorry.
That's okay. Are you a citizen of the United States?
Yes, Your Honor.
And how much formal education do you have?
12th grade, Your Honor.
Can you read, write, speak, and understand the English language?
Yes, Your Honor.
Before this happened, did you have a job?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Have you ever been treated for mental illness, a mental disorder, a psychological disorder, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or any similar condition?
Yes, Your Honor.
What are those conditions?
Bipolar disorder.
All right, and what sort of treatment did you receive for that?
I received, I think inpatient mental health
Okay, and when was that? Just approximately.
a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago. Did they give you any medications?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you on those medications now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and are you taking them as prescribed?
Yes, ma'am.
Do those medications help you think clearly?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you in control of your thoughts in this courtroom today?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you know who these people are sitting next to you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Counsel, are you confident that he's in control of his thoughts today and he knows what he's doing?
Yes, Judge, I am.
Okay. Sir, do you have a weapons carry license?
No, Your Honor.
Did anyone force you, other than this plea today, did anyone force you or threaten you in any way to get you to enter this guilty plea today?
No, Your Honor.
Have you told your lawyer all the facts and circumstances known to you about the charges in this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Has your lawyer counseled and advised you on the nature of each of the charges and on all the possible defenses you might have in this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand that the crimes you're pleading guilty to have a maximum possible sentence of death and a mandatory minimum sentence of life in prison?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. You have the right to plead not guilty and demand a jury trial. If you did so, you would have the right to a speedy and public trial by jury, the presumption of innocence, the right to confront and question the witnesses against you, which means you would have the right to see and hear all witnesses called to testify against you and to cross-examine and question all such witnesses. You would have the right to subpoena any witnesses and evidence in your favor. You would have the right to the assistance of an attorney during the trial. You would have the right to testify and offer evidence. But you would also have the right not to incriminate yourself. And that means you would have the right to remain silent and not testify. Do you understand that by pleading not guilty or remaining silent, not entering a plea, do you understand that you would have a jury trial with all of these rights I just went over?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand that if you plead guilty, as you're doing right now, you're not going to have a jury trial and that you are giving up all of these rights?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you waive your right to a jury trial?
Yes, I waive my right.
Are you in fact guilty?
Yes, Your Honor.
This form that your attorney just showed you, is this your signature on the form?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you answer these questions yourself?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Did you go over the form with your lawyer?
I did.
Did you initial and make some other mark on each question on this form with your response to each question?
Yes, Your Honor.
Was there any part of the form that you were unclear on or that you did not understand?
No, Your Honor.
Did anyone force you or threaten you in any way to get you to sign or initial any part of this form?
No, Your Honor.
Are all of your answers on this form true and correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, sir, it's my understanding that you have waived all of your habeas and appellate rights. I want to be clear that you understand what that means, okay? If you were to challenge your plea in any way by habeas corpus, you would have 4 years from today to do so. If you were to file a notice of appeal, you would have 30 days from today to do so. If you were to attempt to withdraw your guilty plea, that would have to be done within the same term of court within which I sit. In addition to that, you have federal habeas rights. You have waived any and all rights to appeal today's proceeding. And it's my understanding that you have signed an agreement to waive these rights, including your habeas and appellate rights. Do you understand that you have waived those rights?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is that what you want to do?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Gilbert, is the sentence recommendation by the state the same as to what you and your client agreed?
Yes, Judge, it is.
And have you gone over this form with your client?
I have, Judge.
Have you informed him of his rights, and have you fully explained his rights to him?
I did, Judge, yes, ma'am.
Do you believe he understands the consequences of a guilty plea?
I do.
Do you know any reason why I should not accept your client's plea in this
I
case?
do not.
Okay. Have you informed your client of what it means to waive all of his appellate rights for post-conviction, post-plea review?
Yes, Judge.
Is there anything further you would like to tell me about your client?
No, Judge, we are simply here to accept responsibility.
Okay. Mr. Goldern, are you satisfied with the job Ms. Gilbert has done for you in today's proceeding?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Are there any victim statements or anything the state would like to add before we do that?
Nothing to add, Your Honor. We do have some victim impact.
Okay.
Judge, first of all, before we start with the witnesses coming forward, I have been asked to inform the court, Linda Marchetti, who is Deputy Jonathan Koleski's mother, is present. She's not going to make a statement, but she wanted the court to know she's here, present in support. As well, Amy McDowell, his wife, is also present, has been with the DA's office throughout this process. She's elected not to make a statement today, but she is here and present. With that, Melissa Marchetti, please come forward.
Ma'am, if you're welcome. Please raise your right hand. Solemnly swear or affirm the information you give this court that pending matters should be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you.
If you could, you are your hand, man. If you could, please introduce yourself to the court and state your name for the court.
Thank you. My name is Melissa Marchetti, and I am the one of two sisters of the victim.
Could you spell your last name for Ms. Nelson, please?
Marchetti, Marchetti.
Ma'am, I understand you have a victim impact statement you'd like to read this morning?
Yes, sir, thank you. Jonathan Randall Koleski was better known in this community as a deputy sheriff of the County Cobb Sheriff's Department, as well as a veteran of the United States Army. And he was so much more than that. He was a complex person with a life ahead of him, and a lot of people who cared for him, people that he made an impact on their lives. To me, he was John. He was a protective big brother who taught me how to ride a bike. He was that kid in the neighborhood who rounded up all the other kids on the street so they could make friends with each other and play sports. He was brilliant too. He had that sharp, quick wit about him that made him one of the funniest people I've ever known. Even when he was off duty, he served his community. There's stories others have shared with me of him helping complete strangers that were in need. And he loved his mama. Excuse me. This past Thanksgiving was not an easy one. I feel like I could hear him pointing out all his favorite dishes that he loved just the way his mama would make them. But he wasn't there. He was humble, he was grateful, he was generous, and he was proud to serve his community. It's for all these reasons that I am heartbroken. Heartbroken that he was taken from us in such a senseless manner. This community has been robbed of one of its incredible deputies, and I've been robbed of a brother. I feel that it's only right that his killer receives life in prison without the possibility of parole. And I have faith in the justice system that this will be served so that the first steps can be taken in healing the broken heart of this community and of John's family and loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for sharing that.
Still calls Megan Barrios.
Ma'am, please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the information you give this court in the pending matter should be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
If you could speak into the microphone for us.
I do, yes.
If you would, introduce yourself to the court and spell your last name to the court, please.
Megan Barrios, Barrios.
Ma'am, I understand you also have a victim impact statement?
Yes, sir. Dear Judge, my name is Megan Barrios. Feels like I've wrote this letter 1,000 times, waiting for months to address the court on behalf of my brother, Jonathan Koleski, or as many know him by, John. I'm supposed to explain to you how this has affected me, how it's impacted my life. In all honesty, I don't think it's possible. Everything I write doesn't seem enough. I shouldn't have to write something like this. How do I describe how much my brother meant to me, his mom, my entire family, and his wife? How do I get you to understand the pain and constant lump in my throat feeling? But I'll give it my best shot. On September 8th, 2022 at 7:45 p.m., I was at Home Goods with my husband and 2 children doing some early Christmas shopping. Upon leaving the store, I had some random chest pains I couldn't quite put my finger on where they were from because they were so out of the blue. Later that evening, around 2:30 in the morning, I'd be woken up by the most unimaginable, gut-wrenching phone call from my sister, Melissa, with a shaky voice that verbatim said, "I'm so sorry. John is not with us anymore." Sorry, I can't see. I remember falling to the floor, unable to catch my breath. My husband, still confused to what's going on, trying to console me. He asked what happened. I screamed, my brother's gone." That night, my life changed forever. My mind raced with regret that I missed that last phone call, regret that I didn't visit more, regret that I wasn't a better sister. The memories started to flood my brain and the tears were endless. I was strong on the outside, as many viewed me, but crumbling on the end. Almost every night since then, I wake up jumping out of my sleep, scared I'll get another bad news phone call. My heart races anytime I hear the phone ring. Gathering photos, military information, and writing a eulogy and funeral speech while I'm still trying to grieve was paralyzing. I'm traumatized from seeing my brother in a casket, unrecognizable. I've seen movies where there are funerals for veterans where they play taps, or 21 Gun Salute, but living it is a different reality, especially when it's your own brother. I can't get the end of watch radio call out of my head that was played on the loudspeaker, or the sight of my mother sobbing while she hugged the folded American flag. I will never hear his laugh or see his funny two-step dance that he did in the most random moments. I'll never get to hug him. I'll never get another birthday call or text either. The ability to see or speak to him has been taken from me, taken from everyone in this courtroom who knew and loved him. My grief has come in stages, shocked, to furious, to devastated, to shattered, to shame, to strength and determination. I'm determined to carry on his legacy and his pay-it-forward mentality. Growing up, my brother was my hero. John was the oldest of 5 children. He protected all of us. He even joined the army and protected his country. That's just what he was, a protector. He faced some hard times overseas, but he always promised he would come back home, and he did. Coming home from his last tour, I knew I could finally relax my worries. He was home, he was safe. He put his talent and good heart to good use and became a police officer, when in reality, years later, he'd be taken from me by a civilian in which he would have laid down his life for, and consequently did. You see, my brother, he fought for the very freedom that the defendant decided to forfeit the moment he cowardly decided to end 2 lives. And not just any 2 lives, but 2 police officers. I've always wondered what the defendant's thoughts were in the moment he realized what he had done. And I can only imagine it was along the lines of, and excuse my language, Judge, "Oh, I fucked up." Because you see, nobody praised the defendant when the news hit. Nobody decided it was doomsday and it was time to react with him. In fact, the opposite occurred and thousands joined together. The community grew closer and the outpouring of love was beyond comforting. I've always had my utmost respect for law enforcement, but after witnessing and being part of the day my brother was laid to rest, with the hundreds of first responders, friends and families, and civilians, the defendant didn't break a community, rather he made it stronger. I say all this not to praise him, but to inform him that you didn't break anyone but yourself. I can't sit here and say I'm mad at the defendant. Disappointed, yes, but I won't live a life where I resent anyone, much less give him that satisfaction. I won't allow the defendant's actions to change who I am as a person. My brother lived a life of honor, and he was a great person with an even better heart. He did the right thing when nobody was looking. He was one of the good ones. A death sentence for the defendant will not bring back my brother. It will inflict more pain on more people as another life will be lost. Quite frankly, that would be the easy way out. Serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole confirms a defendant will be consumed with their thoughts and hopefully regrets. Above all else, the defendant will now have an immense amount of time while he looks at the same four walls to self-reflect and possibly grow a heart. And if the defendant does anything before leaving this earth, I pray that it's put to good use. I don't forgive the defendant, and I can't say I ever will. And that will be something that God and I will discuss one day. But the defendant doesn't need my forgiveness. There's someone high above in the clouds looking down at him that will choose that fate. I hope that every time he hears the cell door close and lock behind him and the sounds echo off the shoebox size of a cell he's in, he's reminded of John and Marshall and the freedom that he will never get back. As the state would say, after closing arguments, the state rests. The baby sister to Jonathan Koleski, Megan Barrios, now rests. No injustice will be served today. Thank you.
Jody Irvin. Judge, this will be read by Ms. McCoy from our office by consent with the defense. Ms. Irvin has written a victim impact statement. She's the wife of Marshall Samuel Irvin Jr. and has asked not to read it herself. Please raise your right hand. Solemnly swear or affirm the information you give this court in the pending matters to be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You would introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Kim McCoy. I'm the director of the Victim Witness Unit for the Cobb Judicial Circuit.
Do you have a victim impact statement from Mrs. Jody Irvin?
I do.
Would you please read that in the record for me?
Thank you. There's no way to put into words the impact that this crime has had on my life and my family. Marshall and I started dating at 17 years old. We have grown up together. Everything we've ever created or accomplished has been done together. He was my home, my safe place. I don't have that now. My kids had a father who never missed a holiday, never missed a school event, never missed a sport. Now they don't have a dad at all. I am a mother parenting alone. I am a woman who has never lived alone, now managing by myself. I've never mowed my own lawn. I've never been responsible for taking the trash to the curb on Sunday night, and now I'm left to manage my own life, the lives of my children, and my whole home all by myself. Marshall was a family man. All he ever wanted was to be an involved dad and to create a safe, happy life for his kids. On September 8th, that life was taken from my children. My children were introduced to an evil in this world that we have been trying to shelter them from since they were born. My children's innocence was stolen the night they lost their daddy. Physically, our lives will never be the same without him here, but mentally, this will affect their lives in every way. I wonder if they'll ever really trust people. I wonder if they'll be scared to be alone, or scared of men, or scared of guns. Will they remember how good their daddy treated me and what to expect from a man? Their dad will not be present for any more sports or any more birthdays. He will not be there for their graduations or to walk them down the aisle. Children need and deserve guidance from two parents. Now they are left with just me, doing the best I can by myself. In addition to all of the physical, emotional changes in our lives, Marshall was the main income in our family. So financially, our lives have changed as well. Just another obstacle I am now managing on my own. I understand that Christopher Golden has also lost his own father. I hope if he has 1 ounce of empathy that it will be used up thinking about what he has taken from my children. I hope if he is able to feel guilt that it consumes him until the day he dies, because he is a destroyer of lives. He deserves all the misery God will allow him until his very last breath.
Thank you. Your Honor, the state has no more witnesses, but I believe we still need to enter a formal plea of guilty on the face of the indictment.
Mr. Golden, is there anything that you want to say?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, sir. I'm going to accept your guilty plea. And I make a finding that there is a factual basis to support it, that you understand the nature of the crimes and the consequences of your guilty plea, and that you've decided willingly, knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily to plead guilty. I'm also going to make a finding pursuant to 171030 OCGA 171032, and the court further finds beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of a statutory aggravating circumstance provided in 171030 of committing the offense of murder against 2 peace officers who were engaged in the performance of their duties. I'm going to pass down the indictment for signature.
Please enter, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, sir. I am going to sentence you in accordance with the plea negotiations. To malice murder on count 1, life in prison without parole. On count 2, malice murder, life in prison without parole. That will run consecutive to count 1. Count 3 for felony murder has been vacated by operation of law. Count 4, felony murder, also vacated by operation of law. Count 5, aggravated assault on a peace officer, 20 years to serve in confinement, consecutive to count 2. On count 6, aggravated assault on a peace officer, 20 years to serve in confinement. That will run consecutive to count 5. On count 7, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, sentence you to 5 years to serve in confinement, consecutive to count 9. On count 8, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, receive 5 years to serve in confinement, which will run consecutive to count 7. On count 9, hindering apprehension or punishment of a criminal, 5 years to serve in confinement, which will also run consecutive to count 6. All right, have I missed anything from the state? Is that inaccurate?
That's accurate, Your Honor. The waiver and the forfeiture of weapons is also on the same sheet.
Okay. And have I missed anything from the defense counsel?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Golden, that concludes your guilty plea. I honestly don't know what to say to you in this proceeding. There really aren't any words that I can say to you that's going to make things better for this family or for our law enforcement community. I wish there was something I could say. I would if I could. If I thought lecturing you would have some sort of meaningful impact, I might do that, but I don't think that's going to make a difference. So the fact is, you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life. You're going to have a long time to think about your actions and what you did here and how senseless and vile it was. And you can think about the impact that your actions have made on this family and on this community. That's all. You can take them back.